Well, good evening and welcome to another, I say evening, might be daytime, wherever you're listening to this, or morning, whatever it is. Really good to have you as part of the Edufuturists podcast again today, part of this community that we're building, shaping the future of education. We are pleased today to be joined all the way from the Middle East, and we'll let him tell his story in a moment, Alex Gray. And Alex, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that intro as well, by the way, in terms of just the music and how everything is. I've yet to actually try that on my Riverside. I've never had the courage to do it, but the fact that you guys are doing it it's awesome. That was awesome.
Well, thank you. We do try. We've for those who are listening, we've moved to a new platform for recording, as you'll see, and you'll see some of the new content that's going out based around this. So do give us some feedback. Let us know. Drop a little message in on YouTube, or drop us a little message on Spotify if that's where you listen, or just do that old email thing, info@edufuturists.com. Wherever you want to go, we'll listen to it. Steve will filter it out, and he'll respond back to you within 24 hours SLA. So anyway, Alex,
if you're my age at the age of 40, you're going to email us. If you're Ben's age, you're catching up, and you'll make a decision with your email or anything else. If you're cool like Alex, you'll probably drop us a voice note or something else. Who knows?
Hey, I'm 40.
Oh, right, fair enough. Well, you just look like a better 40 than I do. So
I'm just a young buck. I'm just the young buck on this call. I'm just going to go out and do skateboarding and that, guys. I'll leave you two old guys to talk about slippers and cups of tea. Anyway.
Really.
Love it. So, Alex, we met for the first time. We've obviously had a couple of conversations over LinkedIn and on socials, but we met for the first time in Bucharest just a few weeks ago, really, a couple of months ago, over in Romania at AI Education with Matthew and the team over there. And you've been running a podcast yourself for a while, and we'll get into talking about your podcast. That's the reason why the quality of his video and his sound will be on point today. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, blooming heck, that's a good camera. He's got a proper setup. So Alex, tell us a little bit about you, because obviously you're not from Dubai originally. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So yeah, I am originally from England, from a tiny little village called Kings Bromley in the Midlands. I think I have about 1,500 people, maybe slightly less, 1,500 people growing up. So I had quite a pretty really decent upbringing. I was explaining to this conference on Saturday. We were talking about STEAM, and I was sort of talking about this village I'd grown up in, and the fact I had a football pitch literally come out of my house, turn left 50 meters down the road, so I can go and play football after school. I was mad into rugby, so I would always be practicing rugby throughout the winter, kicking and doing. And on the other side of that was the cricket pitch and had nets. So I was always busy, just sport and doing. And that led me to Loughborough. I went to Loughborough University, and I think typical parents, and Ben, you'll probably be having this conversation soon, but typical parents, you kind of graduate, you're almost there to graduate university. My dad took me aside at the Easter and said, "So what are you going to do now?" And I was like, "I've got no idea." And I'd always done a little bit of rugby coaching, a few injuries. I broke my leg playing when I was at school. And so I was like, well, I did some coaching badges. I did the RFU level 1, and I really enjoyed working with young kids and coaching and rugby. And he just said, "Why don't you look into teaching?" And so at Loughborough, they offered the PGC in science, because my degree's in human biology. So I could stay at Loughborough, could be involved in rugby and sports, friends, and do a PGC there, and which was great. So I got shipped out to Peterborough for the first sort of part of training, and we had to live in a hotel for 3 months. I say a hotel, it was kind of one of those like business travel lodges. So you had a kitchenette in where you were staying. And there was this nice, like, amazing basement part when no one else was there really. It was just me and 2 of the teachers, both scientists. And so we'd go there Sunday, and we'd come back obviously Friday after school, and we just worked together, and it was great. And then the other part was then over in Nuneaton. So I did a training stint there, what was then turned into a special measures school. So I got really both sides of what was the King's Peterborough, and then obviously to what this special measures school in Nuneaton was. And I remember it was about March time, and this was back in 2006. I was applying for jobs as people do, and I got a call from a grammar school in Warsaw. He said, "We really, I'd applied for this job." And said, "We're really interested. Can you come in today?" So I spoke with my head of science, and he was like, "Yeah, to literally go, it'd be great." So I go in, meet the headmaster, sit down, have a chat, and he's like, "Well, my deputy isn't here. He's normally the one that does this." He said, "But I've looked at your CV, your references. We're going to offer you a job." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, we're going to offer you a job." And this was without teaching a lesson, without meeting half the staff. He said, "We're desperate for a games teacher as well as a biologist, a scientist, as someone that could come in and do rugbies and sports in the afternoons, as grammar schools do, but also teach science." And that kind of gave me a really false impression of what then getting jobs in education was like, because I thought this is a doddle. You just apply for jobs and it'll be fine. And lo and behold, years later, when I've started applying for jobs, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'll be fine. And we all know it really isn't like that. So I did 3 years there, and then decided I'd move on to what was a state boarding school it's called Old Swinford Hospital in Stourbridge. 4 years, lived on campus in the boarding school, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. They were a huge rugby school, huge sports school, but just the camaraderie just of living in a boarding house. And obviously these kids are there on a state education, but obviously paying for boarding. So it's what used to be the hospital schools, the charity schools. That was amazing. And then unfortunately, my dad got sick. And so we were like, right, we need to move back closer to home. Stourbridge was about an hour away. So I then picked up a head of science job at another grammar school just in Sutton Coldfield. And my wife was working in Sutton Coldfield at the time, so it was easy, could live and be close to home. And then my kind of wife said, like, my business, the company I work for, starting to look at opening offices abroad. And we'd always kind of talked about it. We had our first child. She was pregnant with the second. And I was like, right, okay, where are they opening an office? And she went, Dubai. And I was like, amazing. I'll apply for some jobs and see what comes. And she's like, yep, sounds good. And anyway, apply for some jobs. A couple of days later, got an interview. And then like, right, we're going to offer you the job. You got 3 days to decide. And my wife, Kerry, was like, oh, I thought this was one of those crazy ideas that you had where, you say something, but nothing ever comes of it. And we just carry on with life as normal. And this was one time. It's like, nope, we've offered this job. And this was like March time in 2015. And I went to my parents. And at the time, my dad was really sick. And they were like, go, just go. Like we've always said, like, don't regret anything. Just go and explore, go and do. And my dad passed away then in the April of 2015. And I said to my mum, look, we'll forget it. And she was like, no, go. Your dad will have always wanted you to go. Just go. And so we kind of said, right, okay, that's it. So we had a house, we put it on the market in May, and it took a day to sell. My wife's an interior designer. So literally people came around and went, this is amazing. So it's like, right, in a day. So we packed everything up, moved in with my mum for 3-4 months. We had, at that point, Ava was probably like 15 months old. Kerry gave birth to Olivia July 7th, and we moved in August. So we've been here ever since. And I've done 3 different schools, and I'm just about to move to my 4th in August as a head of sixth form. So something you can relate to there, Ben. I'll be picking your brains and getting some advice off you regarding that. And that's me. We've been in Dubai then for the last 9 years. And most international educators, if you start to speak to them, will be like, oh, we'll go for 2. We'll do this, and then we might move on, or we'll come home. And we've had those situations where we've said, oh, should we go home? And now's the right, should we do this? Can we do this? And things happen, like COVID happened, and then the recessions, and you realize actually Dubai as a place to be and live. Very fortunate. I feel that we're very fortunate to be here and have the life that we have, and the schools and the girls to get the education they have. I find it very difficult to want to move home. I still call UK home, want to move back or do anything, because I just feel so settled now. And for my kids, they know bits of England, but they were literally 20 months and 2 months, give or take, when they first moved out. So, they know nothing else. And my youngest is, she's got this real American accent, international accent, because she was raised on YouTube TV and things like that. So in the summer, we're out in America. I've got family that live in Canada, and we go and see them, and she just fits right in, to the point where my wife's Yorkshire, by the way. And so she's softened, but she's got that twang. And I say Birmingham, but really, I have no accent. My eldest has no accent. And so when it comes to the youngest, she's American, and these Americans are looking at us going, does she belong with you? You know, are you really? It's like, yeah. We're really her parents. She's with us. But yeah, that's it. And we're still going strong 9 years later.
Steve, you have to press on mute before you speak. That's the rule in a podcasting.
It's gone, and well, to be fair, it's Riverside. Not to
You're blaming the
Riverside.
Riverside. It's the same button. It's the same button on StreamYard to press unmute.
Well, the interesting bit is I've pressed it 3 times. It turns it off and on. So I don't know what's going on with it, but that's absolutely fine. And also, I don't know, but I've just got boxes all over my screen. But yeah, the best part of that story was Yorkshire. What a county. What a county.
The losers in the War of the Roses that we talk about quite regularly, Steve, right? Yeah.
I just ignored that. You must have been on mute, Ben. I'll show you where it is next time. But yeah, what a story, what a journey. And I've got friends who teach in Dubai. My friend's wife is a doctor out there, and he's still an educator, and he constantly says, go back to teaching and live out here. And I was like, it means I'd have to go back to teaching. As much as I loved my time in teaching, I'm old now, and I'd be that old teacher. And I just don't think I've got the longevity. I probably had the children and know how tired I am. Don't think I could do it with 30 kids in the classroom now. So yeah. So what is, for those people listening in the UK, those steps that you've taken and everything else, what does the international education system look like and offer you that is very different to the UK in terms of that context then? I'm really interested in that bit. What does an international sports/science teacher look like on the international scene in comparison to the UK?
I mean, probably, I'm trying to think in comparison wise, my friends are still there. Like, the working day is the same. If anything, we start earlier. So my body clock has completely shifted. Like, when I originally came, again, there's the time difference, but I was like, I never used to make 9 o'clock lectures. And okay, teaching in school, you kind of go, right, I can be up and out the door by 7, 7:30, get in, I'm all prepped. Here, it's like we're in school for 7 o'clock. And the kids are in by 7:30. So super early start is one thing. And it takes a while to get used to that. And then all the schools here, from an international perspective, are fee paying. So they're businesses. People are paying money to come to this. And so with that, there is a independent feel, but high expectation. So parents are really supportive. Parents are here. And because of that and the business, the facilities are phenomenal, like across the board phenomenal in terms of sports facilities, classroom facilities, the reprographic side of things. All the students are bring your own devices. So every student has a laptop or an iPad, and within the school, there's spares to go around. So that just means how you're delivering your lessons and the types of lessons you can deliver are just steps ahead better. On a day-to-day basis. So even for my kids in primary, like, they're in a bring your own device from year 1, year 2 type of thing. They're using it. Whereas back in the UK, and just from experience from speaking to my friends with their kids there, it's just very different. And it doesn't mean the content's different. It doesn't mean we still do GCSEs, we still do A-levels. And here they'll have IGCSEs and you have IB. So the content-wise, yeah, same. But if you actually look at then the skills and the other components, the other probably holistic side of things that you'd want to incorporate, the support that you get pastorally, I think that side collectively is just so much higher up. But you're paying for that, and schools here are not cheap. There is much here than it would be to send a kid to university. Like, that's the reality of it. But for a teacher, if you're here and you've got the right package and you're getting your child's place free or 2 child's place free, you look at it and go, well, I'm here working. My kids are with me at my school. I get to see them frequently, which is lovely. I can go down to their sports days. I can go and do these activities. But then obviously I'm not having to pay for it to some extent. And my work is the same. The holidays I get are really good. So those types of things, I think, kind of offset it for me and balance it out, because the other part is it's hard, like because of expectation, because of business, because you're on a 2-year contract, high expectation, and sometimes because of that you get a high turnaround of staff. So it swings and roundabouts with it, but I would say generally, from my side anyway, as a family perspective, the good far outweighs the negative or challenge.
Yeah, and obviously we chatted about the work that you've done and the consistency in that space around ensuring that level of competency, and is as much about the teachers staying on top of their workload, staying on top of their learning, so that they have to be at the top of their game, right? So if you've got people who are paying significant fees to come, and there's a high expectation in terms of results and high expectation in terms of outcomes beyond just results as well, sporting and all the other things that go with that, right? The key bit there really is about how we develop teachers, and teachers develop themselves, and I know that that's something that's been high on your agenda, right? About that learning and continuous learning, and then like conferences and workshopping and training and whatever else. How does that in terms of your experience compared to the UK, which seems to be not a massive focus around that, or less focus around that? What does that look like over in Dubai?
Yeah, PD here is a massive thing. And I think, and that can be, although it's competitive schools, you'll find that there's lots of people now that want that actually cross collaboration. It really is here. I mean, we say 6 degrees of separation. In fact, it's so much smaller. Like, because the Dubai is actually, it's a small city, but the density, the populace is vast. And then the number of schools here is huge, and they're building more and more. So educators move and leave. And so you get this massive network. Like I could probably name 10 different schools, 15 different schools I've got friends at. And that network extends, which is great. And so when it comes to the conference side of things, there's lots of them taking place. I mean, this weekend alone, like the BSME did the STEAM conference, and at the same time, Research Ed were out here for a Dubai conference and brought the likes of I can never pronounce his surname, so I do apologize, but Ollie Caviglioli, I think that's right. And then you've got Bradley Bush, Kate Jones was out, Stuart Kime, Rob Coe. So those guys all came out for this conference. So I think that kind of just shows the value, and then how well regarded education in the Middle East and in Dubai and these areas is, and the fact that because I suppose there is that money, the willingness and to have people out. I mean, Dan's out here. I mean, I met Dan last August, and he was out, I think, for maybe the second time, and he's been back, I think, 2 or 3 times, and be back later this year. So those types of schools will be like, yes, we want these individuals to be in. We want them to work with our staff, and then in-house, in shop, like, it's interesting. It's the same, I would say, in-house. It would be the same as the UK. Like, it would really depend on who's your teaching and learning practitioner. Because in some schools you can get really good ones, and in other schools you can get not so good ones. And it's the same here. But generally, the offering within the small centre, you could go 20 minutes and or an hour down to Abu Dhabi, and there's numerous different things happening throughout the year. Some for free, and obviously some paid for, but just the sheer number of people that will turn up then on a Saturday to do something is like, I think I'm at a conference in May on a Sunday, and we've had 700 people register. So that kind of level of things just shows, I think, how teachers are willing to give up their time, the value of what they're going to get, and then the quality of educator out here that's sharing their content, because it's not flying anyone in. These are all teachers working within the UAE that will be leading and talking about. So I think there's lots of quality teachers here in that small space.
Yeah, so PD and development and ensuring there's a network as well. Interesting that you said that an hour down the road in Abu Dhabi, and the people that are coming out, the caliber of people that are coming out, but also that commitment to know that because of that expectation, there is a high demand. But interestingly, you're in that international school space, and that's a really important element in the Middle East and beyond. And there's a lot of transition. You talked about transition of staff. There's a lot of transition between families moving. So there needs to be a consistency, doesn't there, really, about the quality of what's happening in year 7, what's happening in year 9, what's happening in year 12, to make sure that if families do move, like international school families might do, there's a consistency. But also tied to that is that concept around the international schools. So and in that independent sector, like making sure that things work cohesively and collaboratively. So have you seen any good examples of like collaboration and in that space as well?
Oh, definitely. So, I mean, I work for the second biggest company. I would say, I think GEMS out here would be the biggest company. And they have clusters of schools and they do collaboration there as well. And then I work for Talim and we have cluster schools as well as other ones that do. So we get to collaborate. We call them like job alikes. And we have these meetings. So within science, we're on teams together, so we can just have conversations about curriculum, sharing ideas. We had something just recently where our head of primary science, also the STEAM leader, had the primary teachers in because we've got this maker space. It's like a huge space downstairs, just full of like amazing equipment. You can fly drones in it. Like it's awesome. And she had people in from like our primary sections and science. She was working with them and showcasing and showing them, and just great PD and collaboration in between schools. So those types of things exist. And then even if it's not with that, I've got friends out here who run something called Collab UAE. Literally, the clue is in the name. And they will go to schools and say, look, do you want to host a collab event on a sort of a Friday? Because on Fridays we finish at midday. So you've got 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock. And they go to a school and they reach out and go, look, aim at this. We're going to find speakers. You get 7 minutes to speak. And it's just about you showcasing something that you've done in class that could be awesome, to share with other teachers. It's free. Come along, gets recorded, gets put up. So the guy called Tom Sale and Andy Price run it. Phenomenal guys. They've run events down at the Expo, do it in different schools, and it's just off their own back. And it's just getting all these teachers in together. And the best thing I think about it is I get to go into a new school and I'm so nosy. So whenever I get to go to new schools, get to have a little nose around what your walls like, what your displays like, meeting then other teachers from these schools and forming this extended network. So from my side, there's loads of those activities that go on. And then you've just got LinkedIn, you've got social media. LinkedIn here, again, just a sheer number of teachers in UAE that are on LinkedIn sharing and talking or messaging and just wanting to grow and develop. Like this whole concept of collaboration is vast here. And I think now it's at a point where people really don't care if you're at this school or at that school. It's like, yes, schools will do their collaboration, clusters will do their collaboration, but teachers are just willing to reach out to other teachers, different schools, and say, hey, I've seen you've done this. Can you help me with this? Or these collab events. It's really, really good and super accessible.
As you go through in terms of your journey and everything else, and obviously the work that you're doing and the churn and I know you talked about potentially 2 years and the contract. My brother teaches English out in Taiwan, an international school or an American school out there, and he talked about the pressure is very, very different. It's not pressure on results, but it's pressure on expectation in regards to all of those. How does that lead to and those longer days to ensuring that as you want to be at the top of your game, that you can still perform like you would? I'm thinking of like professional footballers, professional teachers, because you're in that context of ultimately when contracts are short and the quality's high and the expectation from parents, not the fans, is so high. And the salary's there. I'm sure you're not paid the same as a footballer, but you're getting my idea.
Yeah.
That actually, how does that restrict burnout? Because ultimately, it's a longer journey, and you're not getting paid 50 grand a week. If not, can I have some, Alex? But like how do you just prevent that burnout and that churn as a dad of children and a husband and everything else that goes with it? How does that work?
It's really hard. And some people don't get that balance right. And I am massively guilty. I think when my kids were younger and I was younger, of not getting that right. And I'll openly say, I get it wrong still now. Like my brain is always going and I like to work. I like to create. And that's on top of doing the teaching part. And some teachers here, you see it, don't get it right. And it's not necessarily for the burnout of work. It's actually younger teachers that will come out and work hard, play hard, because Dubai is a city designed to make you spend money. There's brunches Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the bars, the beaches, all of those different things. And that's really the hard story it is for a lot of teachers who come out here, because they're coming out for the weather, they're coming out for the money, they're coming out for all these things. But it isn't necessarily the work that churns them down. It's burning the candle at both ends, because it's just so accessible. Everything's accessible. And then it's expensive. It really is expensive. But yeah, if you focus just on the working side of things, I had friends that, again, used to come in and just work, get into work at 6:30 in the morning and wouldn't be leaving till later on, because it's marking and it's planning. And I think the landscape of education, especially here, has changed, because when they're looking at what's the value of the marking that you're doing, is it just you going through books, or is it for a purpose that's going to improve and develop? And I think now schools have really cottoned on to this well-being and the importance of it, which when I first arrived was just like non-existent. It was the hustle hard culture. It was like, get that badge, in terms of, this is where I am. I've worked for 12 hours doing this. And there are still some that do it. Like, if you've got the time to do it, great. It's like, I don't. And I want to spend time with my kids. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to do passion projects, things that keep me energized. I want to go to the gym. I want to play rugby, things that keep me rejuvenated and make, complete me as a person. And I think most leaders now recognize that and the value and significance of that, where they're like, no, we want you out the door by 4:30 latest. And no one sends emails after 5:30. If they do, don't answer it. And that's, I've seen that a lot more in the past 2 or 3 years really come in, that wasn't here a while ago. And I think with a lot of people, the how, I think it's just, and teachers, it's weird, we're terrible. I think a lot, and I'm speaking generally, are terrible with it, is time planning. We come into this profession because in essence, we like being told what to do. We like the organization of, this is your lesson for the next year. This is when you're going to teach. These are your lessons. These are your classes. All you've got to think about is what goes into it. But this is the room. These are the times. Come in at this time. Go at that time. And we don't have to think about it. We're creatures of habit that like to be just directed and told. And so when you remove that from teachers, and it's like, right, 4:30 till 7, 8 o'clock, and you're a teacher, I'm just marking and doing, I just find that there could be better at planning time, be it like a project manager would, or something like that as a skill, in terms of just, boxing off time, or, time blocking, whatever it may be, and go, look, this is what I've got to do. And it's the skills you want students to have, especially like revision at the moment, where it's like, right, really important, have your plan, have this mapped out, have your time. And yet teachers, I think we're some of the worst people for it. And we'll just be like, no, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV and mark all evening. It's like, why? You could, if you really wanted to, you could probably get this done, throughout your working day. And then when you get home, you may have to do a bit, but you can do that. So I think the challenges here is still the same as you'd face in any country, in any school, in terms of protecting time and doing. But here it's like, because the contracts are short, there's that pressure of going, well, if you don't fulfill the criteria, you get a 6-month probation. And I've seen a couple of people fail probation, which means at the end of the year they're going, and they don't have a say in that matter. That's the hard reality of it.
It's very interesting that as a model in comparison to other places in the world and other ways of working, because like you said, teachers have jobs for life. It can be, unless you do something incredibly bad in the UK education system, then you're pretty much safe. And interesting, I do think it's increasingly fewer teachers that stay at the same school forever, right? But there is still a good chunk of them. I went to a school the other day, and there were 5 teachers that had been there less than 5 years. The rest of the teaching staff were over 5 years, and then there were probably 25 members of staff that had been there 20 years or more, which is just like, now it might be that it's a really good school. It could also be that it's comfortable. Why would you leave when it's comfortable in that space? And there's a lot of them that have progressed through and all the stuff that sits with it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Nobody's commented and make out that's a bad idea. But that it's not necessarily a bad thing that you've got to be in that position. Interestingly, in lots of professions, you have to accredit or you have to pass certain criteria to continue in that space beyond. It's not like an unlimited contract. So, like, even if you're in sales, for example, you'd have to make sure that you that you have to meet targets. If you don't meet targets, then see ya.
Yeah, it's that.
So, but and I'm not saying we should make education like that, but it is interesting that is a move there. Interestingly, just to take a sidestep a little bit, we laughed and joked at the beginning about the quality of your camera and how perfectly designed interiorly it is and behind you, and nice product placements and all the things that go with it. And you are a podcast host yourself. Maybe if you could just give us a synopsis about that, tell us about why you did it and the kind of things you talk about.
Yeah, happy to, and thank you for this. It's literally just kids' art. I think it's like photos of the girls and things they've done. My wife kindly put up, but yeah. So it came about because during lockdown, I was approached by a publishing company in Singapore. So I was approached by Marshall Cavendish in Singapore. Said, "Look, would you be interested in writing a series of primary science books? Write a chapter for us and submit it, and then we'll go from there." So wrote this chapter and they really liked it. And at the time I'd previously worked as an NYP coordinator. So this idea of introducing concepts and obviously the different types of questions and assessments that come with it, they were like, this is great. Would you be interested in writing these books? And it was for EAL students. And I ended up doing the year 5 book. So you do a teacher book, you do the students book, you do an activities book, and then you write all the lessons. And it was 10 months worth, and it was like, okay, and again, you probably really resonate with you a little bit in terms of writing stuff. It was just hard, great at the end of it, but super hard. But as a bucket list thing to tick off and go, look, I'm a published author. I've got books out there with my name on, and they're being used by hundreds and thousands of students and teachers around the world. That's going to support their learning. It's like I can look back on that throughout my lifetime and go, I'm really proud of that. And that was a driving force for it. But with that came royalty checks. And so every December I get a royalty check from those. And my very first one came through, where are we now? 2022. So that's right. So we got this royalty check December 2022, sat in around Dubai, a friend's house at Drew's house, and just having a chat and a laugh about stuff. And obviously we talk about podcasting and talking about YouTube, talking about brand within Dubai. So we should start a podcast. And I was like, I've always been a mad camera gear guy, and obviously started YouTubing, and my dad was massive into cameras. My father-in-law was massive into cameras. So I was like, well, I've got the gear. It's like, I've got this money that's come through. It's like, we can do this. It's like, I know how to edit stuff. I'll learn the rest of it. I love it. So literally bought 2 Shure MV7s and some cables, got an audio interface. And it's like, right, let's do it. And playing around with AI at the time, in January, just Christmas, January time, 2023. It's like, right, we need some ideas, names for a podcast. It's like, we go on this podcast, we work here, we do this, iterated and came back. And it's like, oh yeah, the international classroom. So it's like, it's a keeper. We're going to do that. The international classroom it is, with the aim of just me and Drew talking about what happens in our international classroom and things that go on in the UAE and Dubai. And then from there, it kind of just blew up a little bit, where it's like, oh, well, there's all these different people out in the world working in international classrooms and doing things internationally that we could talk to. And so we just started, I think we kind of leveraged my LinkedIn sort of connections a little bit, and it's helped with that. But just to go, hey, I've seen some of the work you're doing on LinkedIn, really interested in it. Do you want to come and talk to me? And near enough everyone you approach goes, yeah, I'd really like to. Some people, I think, if they're not used to it, and it's one of those that you need to have a camera or a microphone, or to some extent that. But the idea of the podcast were really just to reach out to international practitioners and just find out what's going on in their part of the world, in their classroom, what they're doing, and to be able to share it with the international community, and so that they can learn a little bit from that and maybe be inspired by some of the things that they're doing, and maybe just kind of go, I'd like to move to that country and work there. And we've had a few people come to us and go, oh, we listened to the podcast, about Dubai and what it's like working there. We found it really useful, and just like reach out, generally message over LinkedIn or something like that and address it. And others have kind of come to me and said, hey, I heard this, I'm doing this. Would you mind connecting me with such and such? Could you do this? And I kind of found that with doing it, I found myself a kind of a middleman, a connections and bringing people together. And I think that's great. And from my side, I've kind of taken a little bit of time to reflect on it especially over this series, because it's the first of the series, this kind of sequences of episodes, because it's the first one I've done every week. Like I've put an episode out every week, which never done before. And so to be able to do that, it's like I need to stop and reflect on it. And actually what I've realized is that podcasting is probably some of the best professional development I've ever had. Like I'm speaking to people who are running their own schools in Mexico, talking about project-based learning, giving me ideas about how to do it. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I don't just want to do the interview and just leave it, put it out there for everyone else to learn from. If I kind of go back through it and do extra blogs with it or little shorts with it, then I can take these little golden nuggets myself and bring it into my own classroom and practice. And then I'm sharing it with other educators that can go, hey, if you tried this, look at this. And it's been great. Like it's enjoyable, like to really, speak to people and find people that are doing great things that no one's seen or heard of, and kind of go, look, share what you're doing. I think it's phenomenal. And I find great joy in it. And there's also great value from my side of it as a, I suppose, selfishly, to get great professional development out of it, because I get to ask the questions that I'm interested in and learn from these people. And it's been a great journey. We were sort of a year and a half into it. And just thoroughly enjoying it. It can be tricky at times when you want to interview someone who's in America and you've got a 10-hour time difference. But other than that, no, it's been phenomenal.
We say the same thing, don't we, Steve? That idea that we often record on a certain day of the week, not always. Now we move things around, but it used to be that every Thursday night, me, Dan, and Steve would sit and have a conversation about the future of education with somebody from America, somebody from Australia, somebody from down the road in the UK. And it was incredible as our own professional development, like asking questions and thinking about honing our ideas around project-based learning, honing our ideas about assessment, honing our ideas about technology and its appropriate use and well-being and all the things that go with that. And that's it. We know that it's a resource for other people, and people listen to it and go like, oh, it's amazing how many times I go to places and people go, are you from the Edufuturists? I listen to your podcast. Yeah. And I'm like, I say this to Steve. I don't know why. We must have had 1 million people that have said that to us nearly, but we don't get why we're not millionaires from all the listens. But it's an interesting bit. So obviously you get to have those conversations, and you are talking international schooling, but classrooms and learning and whatever else. I suppose, where do you want it to go? What's the kind of vision with it?
I suppose I don't really have one. I'd reached out this year and kind of said, right, I'm going to take it seriously. I kind of put the YouTube stuff aside, and I changed my whole platform around, because I just go, right, who wants to come and sponsor this? Who wants to come out, reach out and sponsor this platform to help, with more equipment, with the aim being then, you'll like this, by the way. So this is for you, Steve. So when we went to Bucharest, me, Ben and Darren stayed in the same hotel. And obviously I was podcasting over at the Cambridge school there. And I brought everything over in my suitcase, and it was literally me, a rucksack, and I think it was like 1 or 2 Hessian bags. I looked like I was going to like the Saturday afternoon market, and I kid you not, I don't know if I can, but basically Ben and Darren just ripped me. Darren especially just ripped me for just carrying stuff around, like 1,000 dirhams worth of equipment in these like Hessian bags you go to the supermarket in. So I was like, right, we got back. I was like, right, I've invested in proper vault like boxes and carries to take everything around. So thanks for that, Ben, by the way. So my ambition really is, I get approached by a lot of schools, and so having the sponsorship of and the collaboration with companies that have value, that's one of the things. Like I want to be able to collaborate with other companies and bring their work into it. But maybe from a business perspective. So there's an exchange of that. So the sponsorship side has been great. My first collaboration with this company, I'm not going to, obviously with you guys, I'm not name dropping anything here, but with this other company, and it's been wonderful and like great apparatus to use. And because of that, it's like, well, I've got a few more cameras, or I've got a bit more gear. I can travel with it. I can put it in one bag now. It looks like a cricket bag. If you remember those big wheelie bags, it looks like one of those. Into schools. You can go anywhere, into schools, into that. And so it would be great to be able to go into schools more and educate them on, like, this is how you can do a podcast. You can, rent gear. I'll come and help out with it in this time. So trying to drive it more of a business perspective on one side and educating others and setting up for schools, but also just keep having great conversations with people from around the world, and actually maybe think, I'd quite like to travel to different parts of the world. I had this crazy idea in my head that during the summer that we could go, or times we're off on holiday and other schools aren't. So like, I think there's kind of like there's like a 2-week window where we finish, because we finish like the very beginning of July. And so there's this 2-week window, and then we're back. I'm generally back in the UK for summer. And I thought, you know what? It would be amazing if over these summer holidays, Drew and I, or whatever it was, could do like that type of road trip where we're away somewhere for 2 weeks and we're just in contact with teachers in these different countries. And we're just going to travel around, set up the podcast in these different locations, and just interview these different educators from different parts of the world. It's kind of a bit like, I suppose it's like the hairy bikers without the cooking. Or I was kind of thinking a bit more like Ewan McGregor type of thing with the bikes.
Or the bike without a bike. Or are you thinking about going on a bike?
No, I used to have I did once have my bike licenses, but I broke my ankle really badly playing rugby. And since then it's like, no bikes. And my wife would never let me go on it. So I think it would be in a hire car. You could just imagine 2 teachers touring around a country for 2 weeks, just like vlogging and videoing, and then going to interview different people about education there, and maybe getting a parent in or getting some students from there. And in my head, I thought that would be an amazing idea. So something like that, maybe, who knows, if someone wants to fund that for me, I would happily go and do it. But something like that, but otherwise, just continue conversations and traveling around and opening up, I think, what other educators are doing to educators in other parts of the world that would have no idea.
It's a really interesting one. So I supported an online school, an independent school. They were branching out and setting up an online element that I think they have some students in Dubai, actually. They were hoping to start next September. They did really well in terms of the whole branding and everything else, and it actually started September just gone. So they're halfway through a school year, or pretty much completion. But we talked about podcasting as a concept, and we were having that conversation around actually in terms of the delivery of not delivery. Teaching, Bob Harrison would shoot me. I'll go backwards and I'll step back in terms of. So remember, Bob, I know you're probably listening. In terms of learning, why is it that we teachers are told to talk a lot, but ultimately podcasting as a medium or as a learning mechanism in education hasn't ever taken off? And we're all sitting here as educators. You're still an active educator, Alex, and still doing it in Dubai. Is that something that you, through your learning with students and everything else, setting it up not only just as an option, but ultimately how teachers can deliver that? So when we talk about well-being in for teachers and learners, why is it they're sitting in the classroom? We've had 3 days of sun in Yorkshire. That's probably going to be the end of it for the rest of the year. That's our summer gone. Why don't we get the kids outside? So when they're walking and doing all this kind of thing, so they can actually absorb information, listen back, and rewind it or speed it up and everything else in that medium. Is that something that you aspire to try and take into the classroom?
Yeah, and actually I've run it a little bit with my year 8s this year. So my year 8 class openly says my guinea pig class. No exams, no pressure. And I openly say, all right, guys, we're going to try something. And so we did a series of it about podcasting, and they were using like 11 labs as well to help them. So just like AI voices and a little bit different with it. But they made some great podcasts, just setting it up as a different form of communication. And so there's that there for it. And I would love to, I think, in terms of being able to showcase it, and I've got ideas about actually creating a course on how to podcast in my head in terms of all the side projects and things that I'm interested in, because I think it boils down to a lot of it is confidence and competence, as well as it like you're not the first guys. I get it all the time. Everyone goes, turn on, it's like, wow, your setup. And it's like, yeah, because I'm a camera geek and I will happily go and spend, if my wife lets me, and most of the time I don't tell her, thousands on gear. Like, that's just what it is. And so all this, but I'll use it. I use it the same as you guys. I record 2-3 times a week. I'll make videos. I'm out and I'll go and travel to places. And so it comes with me. And so I feel like I get real good value for money. But people are intimidated by that and they're scared and they go, I can't do that. I don't have this. And it's then trying to say to them, it's like, you don't need that. It's like I used to just have my iPhone set up and it would just link to my computer, and that would do that. That's what it was for the first, for a lot of the episodes. And so just trying to upskill teachers and go, look, you can do this now. You can just get a cheap, even like the wireless lavs that go into the phone now, easy enough. You don't have to have all these other things. Just start there. I mean, even if it's a case of, but where do well, Adobe AI, the audio online, I think that's free, isn't it? Just go and do that. Most schools do have Adobe suites to some extent. And it's like, just go onto one of the Adobe suites you've got. You can edit it in Audition or go into Premiere Pro or the beta versions of certain things. You could, there's loads of ways and means, and it's like that. I think I work on the don't give me problems, give me solutions. And that's what my friend who was in the military always used to say. Did loads of different friends in the military, so got loads of different sayings and acronyms from them. But that was always one of them. It's like, don't give me problems, give me solutions. And I think if you can look at it that way and go, look, this is a really good medium for different forms of learning and forms of authentic assessments for kids if we want. But for teachers, they're going to look at it and go, I don't have the skills and I don't have the time. And that's why it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Imagine if you're a school and you kind of go, well, we've got this marketing manager, but what we're going to do is we're going to employ a couple of media guys. And these guys are just responsible. And we're going to say, right, we're going to record lessons. So these guys are going to set up cameras in the lessons, and they're going to put some obviously lav mics on, wireless lavs, and we're going to record them, and they're going to do all the editing for you. So over a period of time, you'll build up this sequence and these series of things. So don't worry about it. All you got to do is teach. These guys will do it for you. And imagine if you had that in school, or especially in these ones, like A-level classes. Over a period of time, you would build up a library of then things. So if kids are away on distance learning, they need to review anything. Like, it'd be amazing to do it. Like, and there are people out there. If you go onto Fiverr or all these different ones, like, you could sublease it out. But if you imagine if you had that in school, like, it would be phenomenal. Like, I've looked at it and go, like, with AI and different things, I can go, right, I can take the textbook, take an image of the textbook, put it into AI, into a GPT that's trained on micro learning, and go, take this and put it into a 90-second video for me. And I can turn this camera horizontally and it'll give me then that vertical for TikTok. And I could create a private TikTok channel for students. And I could literally just film, because I've got a teleprompter. I can put a teleprompter on, just read off it. Don't have to be any other like fancy edits and stuff like that. Could just do that. And that works for me in my setup. But then you can get it on phones now. You can get it on iPads, these apps, can't you? If you've seen them, in terms of the teleprompting comes at the top. It doesn't look like you're looking away. So you can do it on your phones or on iPads, which you have in schools. And most people, again, AI free parts, or again, just with the right prompt to micro learning or nano lessons, whatever it is, 90 seconds, which is probably about 250-ish words. You can do that. And so those types of things are there, and it's just upskilling teachers, making them aware of it and giving them resources and time to do it. Because like what you're saying would be a great idea, but I just know that teachers will look back on it and go, skills and time, maybe equipment, is the thing that are holding them back.
Absolutely. I think that idea of giving and just starting, giving it a go, and what's the worst that could happen type space. Like you said, create a TikTok channel that's internal, that's not public facing, that's private. Let them play with that. we interviewed recently on the podcast Brian Aspinall from Codebreaker EDU with Daphne and Daphne McMenemy, and they talked about this idea, like if you want to write a book, just get started, just start. And you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to start to become great, right? It's that cheesiness again. And everything we're doing is about starting. So starting writing a book, starting selling a pack of cards, starting a podcast, starting whatever it is, a business. Just get started and work down that journey. Well, we are coming towards the end of a conversation, and we always try and finish with quick fire questions. If you've listened to any of these, you'll know what the quick fire questions are. If you haven't, then you won't. And interestingly, we will be mixing up these questions. So this might be the last one that you hear of these questions before we move into some new ones. But anyway, there's 3 questions. They are quick fire. I'll ask one, then Steve will ask one, then I'll ask one.
Okay.
So first one is this. Future of exams. Online, traditional, or scrapped?
I'm torn between online and scrapped. I think there's value in, I don't know if you want me to explain it, but I think there's value in the traditional part. I got to speak to someone the other day about it and just sort of said, look, it is a completely unbiased approach because they're externally set, they're externally marked, and so there's still value to some extent. But I just kind of think what we're assessing, what we're examining is probably what needs completely overhauling. So I'm on the fence between online and scrapping them.
Cool.
Okay. Key skill needed for students in 2040.
2040? Oh, I think it will still be adaptability. I think within 15 years' time, in terms of who knows what it's going to be like. You know, if we go back 15 years to what we had then, and looking at where we are now, being able to adapt, I think is always going to be the biggest characteristic, because it doesn't matter then what is thrown at you. You can kind of go and flex and bend and go with roll with the punches, go with the times, sticking with those sayings.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely. And the final one is education in 50 years. What's your vision?
I would like to think it's going to, we kind of say it goes full circle, but I think portfolio-based learning. I think that having those projects in school and portfolios from an early age, like going all the way back to the record of achievement, potentially, but that's what we want to see.
We talked about that in Bucharest, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That's the thing. I'm still an advocate. I'm still massive for it. I think that having portfolios, and whether it's going to be some sort of, let's say, AI digital one or whatever, but showcasing skills and showcasing work, I think, is going to be a key thing, I think, moving forward rather than anything else. I mean, who knows? We could go full circle where we're back to pen and paper. Kids are rebelling already, aren't they, against the use of AI and too much technology in certain schools and just want simple things. So I'd like to think even then it's like good old bit of writing of something, but showcasing what you can do rather than being reliant on a grade on a certificate. I think there's a lot more to be said for show me what you can do rather than, show me what you've done. It's like if you said to someone in any field of work, if I asked you guys now, so do you still think you're the same person that got that degree 20 odd years ago? Do you think you've stayed the same? And it's like, well, no. I think anyone educated would go, well, no, of course I'm not the same as that 21-year-old who got, a first or a 2-2 or whatever it may be. It's like that was 20 odd years ago. And we're still measuring people, aren't we, in jobs now? It's like, what did you get for your degree? It's like, what's that relevant? You should be asking me about my opportunities and my experience. And so I think, if we can see a shift to that, I'll definitely be retired in 50 years. I would be happy for my kids and my grandkids to be getting something like that.
Love it. Well, Alex, thanks so much for joining us from Dubai. Hopefully it isn't too hot there. It's we're expecting it to get hot here. By hot, I mean 20 degrees, right?
Unfortunately, to shatter that illusion for you, we have been off school today and we're off school tomorrow because of rain. So from the floods that happened last week, we had another little downpour today. So some of the places around are still repairing and still sorting out. So yeah, we're off school today and tomorrow, even though this afternoon we had 27 degrees sunshine, luckily drying up some of that wetness.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Alex.